The sun was sinking over the rolling plains of Dry Creek County, painting the horizon gold and crimson. The cattle were restless, and the dust hung in the air like a soft curtain. Silas McGraw leaned against the fence rail, hat tipped low, boots scuffed, eyes shadowed by years of quiet solitude. At 35, Silas was one of the most respected ranchers in the county, and the most stubborn bachelor. Every mother in town had tried to match him with their daughters. Every daughter had tried to charm him with pie, perfume, or promises of comfort. But Silas turned them all away with a quiet shake of his head. "I got enough to tend to," he'd say. "Don't need no one fussing at me." The truth was, Silas wasn't cold. He was haunted. Not by ghosts, but by the memory of losing too much too young. His parents had died in a barn fire when he was 20, and the girl he once loved married someone richer while he was still building fences and dreaming small. Since then, he kept to himself. The ranch was his life. The wind his company. One afternoon, near the end of autumn, Silas rode into town for supplies. The chill in the air hinted at snow coming early this year. The wooden sign outside the general store creaked in the wind, and the usual crowd of farmers and cowhands stood swapping talk. As Silas dismounted, someone new caught his eye, a woman unloading sacks of feed from a wagon that looked twice her size. She wore a worn brown coat, her hair tied back in a loose braid, her hands rough but steady. Her face was sun-kissed, her eyes the clear color of mountain water. She worked without asking for help, though the men nearby pretended not to notice. Silas watched her struggle with a heavy sack, then walked over and said quietly, "Let me help you with that." "Ma'am," she turned sharply, squinting. "I don't need help. I can manage." Her voice had a firm, no-nonsense tone that made Silas pause. "I can see that," he said with a faint smile, "but reckon it don't hurt to share the load." Reluctantly, she let him take the sack, watching as he lifted it with ease. "You new around here?" he asked. "Name's Clara Reeves," she said. "Moved in with my little brother. We got a small patch east of the ridge. Not much yet, but we'll make do. Ridgeland's rough." "Hard soil," Silas remarked. "Hard work don't scare me," she replied, eyes steady on his. Something in that look, plain, honest, unflinching, made Silas tip his hat and say, "I reckon it don't." In the weeks that followed, Silas found himself thinking of Clara more than he wanted to admit. He'd see her in town selling eggs or trading for supplies, always working, always quiet. Rumors spread fast in Dry Creek. Folks said she was a widow. Others said her husband ran off and left her with a farm and a sick brother. Silas didn't care much for gossip, but one frosty morning when he saw her chopping wood outside her cabin, he couldn't just ride by. He dismounted, called out, "You'll wear yourself out splitting wood that thick." Clara looked up, sweat on her brow, her breath misting in the cold. "Better that than freezing." "Still," he said, walking closer, "you could use a sharper axe." "That one's dull." She handed it over without a word. Silas tested the blade and nodded. "Tell you what, I'll sharpen it. Bring it back tomorrow." "I can pay you," she said. Didn't ask for pay. Her expression softened just a little. "Then thank you, Mr. McGraw." "Silas," he corrected. She hesitated, then nodded. "Clara." The next morning, he brought the axe back, polished and sharp as a mirror. He stayed to chop a few logs, and before he knew it, the day had melted away. Clara offered him coffee, and they talked by the fire while her brother, a quiet boy named Eli, listened. Clara told him how their parents had died of fever, how she'd come west, hoping for a fresh start, how hard it was keeping up the land with just the two of them. Silas, in turn, spoke little, but when he did, she listened like his words meant something. Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed more and more, sometimes by chance, sometimes by quiet intention. He fixed her fence. She mended his torn shirts. He brought extra hay when her cow fell ill. She baked him cornbread in thanks. They never said what was growing between them, but it was there, in the soft looks, the small kindnesses, the silence that didn't feel lonely anymore. Then came the storm. It was early December when a blizzard rolled down from the mountains, fierce and sudden. The wind howled like wolves through the canyons, snow piling knee-deep by nightfall. Silas was mending the stable roof when he noticed the smoke from Clara's cabin had gone out. Fear gripped his chest. He saddled his horse and rode out, pushing through the white fury. By the time he reached her place, the roof was heavy with snow, and the barn door had blown clean off its hinges. He kicked the door open. Inside, Clara was huddled by the hearth, trying to keep Eli warm with a dying fire. "Silas," she gasped. "The chimney's clogged. I can't get a draft going." He didn't waste a second. He climbed onto the roof, cleared the snow and soot, then stoked the fire until it roared again. When he came down, his coat was soaked and his hands raw. "Reckon you two can't stay here tonight," he said firmly. "You'll freeze if the storm worsens. Come on, my place is warmer." Clara looked at him, torn between pride and gratitude. "Silas, we can't—" "You can," he interrupted gently. "Ain't no shame in keeping warm." She finally nodded. "All right." The McGraw ranch was quiet that night, the wind howling outside while the fire glowed inside. Eli fell asleep on the rug, and Clara sat near the window, watching the snow. Silas poured her a cup of coffee, set it by her side. You did right coming west, he said quietly. Takes grit. Sometimes I wonder if I did, she murmured. Every day's a fight to survive, and every night feels too long. Silas studied her face in the firelight. You ain't alone, Clara. Not anymore. Her eyes met his, steady and searching. You say that now, but come spring, you'll want your peace again. I've heard folks say you don't want a woman at all. Silas gave a small, wry smile. Folks talk too much, maybe, she said softly. Then, with a half smile that carried both challenge and hope, she asked, You want a wife, Silas McGraw? Or just a winter alone? The question hit him like a spark to dry grass. He opened his mouth, then stopped. All his life, he'd thought he didn't need anyone, that love was a luxury for men who hadn't lost everything. But looking at her now, strong and tired and brave, he realized he'd been wrong. He reached out, gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. Reckon I've been alone long enough. Clara's breath caught. The fire cracked softly between them. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, something warmer took root. Winter passed slowly, the way it always does when hearts begin to thaw. Silas taught Eli to ride and rope. Clara took over the ranch kitchen, and soon the place didn't feel so empty. There was laughter in the air, and music on Sundays when Silas found his old guitar again. By spring, the snows melted and wildflowers painted the hills. One morning, Silas saddled his horse and rode with Clara to the edge of the ridge where the land stretched wide and endless. Clara, he said, removing his hat, this ranch was built on hard days and lonely nights. But it's better now, with you here, she smiled softly. You sure about that, Cowboy? I can be stubborn. So can I, he said. I guess we'll suit fine. She laughed, the wind carrying the sound like a song across the valley. Then he took her hand, rough palm against soft skin, and said, I don't need half the county chasing me anymore. All I want's the woman who asked if I wanted a wife or just a winter alone. Clara's eyes shimmered. And what's your answer, Silas? He leaned close, whispering, a wife. For every winter to come. That summer, the bells of Dry Creek rang for the first wedding the town had seen in years. Folks said they'd never seen Silas smile like that before, like the sun had finally come up after a long, cold night. Clara wore a simple white dress. Eli stood proudly by her side, and when Silas took her hand before the preacher, there wasn't a soul who doubted it was right. From that day on, the McGraw Ranch wasn't just a place of work and dust, it was a home, a place of laughter, love, and the quiet kind of happiness that comes from two hearts brave enough to start again. And when winter returned, the folks in town still teased Silas, asking if he missed his lonely nights. He'd just grin, tip his hat toward the ridge, and say, Not a chance. I've got someone to keep me warm,